Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a special Wednesday night CHAI ELUL video featuring both the Baal Shem Tov and Rabbi Shneur-Zalman, founder of Chabad. I translated and adapted this story from Sipuri Hasidim by the great Rabbi Shlomo Yosef Zevin. I titled the story, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Once in his travels, Rabbi Shneur-Zalman was stopped in a certain city. While he was there, a house caught on fire. The danger was great that the fire would spread to nearby houses or to other streets and even to the whole city, because nearly all the houses then were made of wood. There weren't enough firemen and they were becoming overwhelmed. The Rebbe asked to be brought to the neighborhood where the fire was. At the scene, a group of Russian soldiers from the local garrison had been sent to help, and they were trying to extinguish the fire, but were not succeeding. The Rebbe stood in front of the blazing home and leaned on his cane. He remained silent for a few moments. Suddenly the fire died down. The exhausted soldiers could barely believe the evidence of their eyes. They ran to report the astonishing turn of events to their commanding officer. He listened calmly, then sent a delegation of soldiers to ask the rabbi to come to see him. When the Rebbe arrived, the officer asked him, "Are you by chance the son or grandson of the Jewish holy man known as the Baal Shem Tov?" The Rebbe told him he was not actually a blood relative, but he considers himself his spiritual grandson, because he was a close student of the main disciple and successor to the Baal Shem Tov. "If so," remarked the officer, "I can somewhat understand your extraordinary accomplishment today. Come, sit down, and I will tell you what happened between my deceased father and the Baal Shem Tov. My father carried the rank of general. Once he came with his troops to the town of Mezibuz shortly before your holiday of Passover. My father then was deeply troubled because several weeks had passed since he had not received a letter or any message at all from his pregnant wife. Brooding, with his imagination running wild, he confided his distress to a few local residents whom he was friendly with. They immediately suggested that perhaps he should seek the advice of the holy Jew who lived in their town, who was a wonder maker and revealer of secrets. My father sent a soldier to the Baal Shem Tov to request an appointment. Much to his surprise, the Baal Shem Tov refused to see him, the general. He sent another soldier, but the Baal Shem Tov refused. Still, well, my father was annoyed, but he knew about you Jews and your holidays. He sent a delegation of several soldiers, this time with the threat that if the rabbi does not grant the general an audience, he would force the Jewish community to provide lodgings for his troops, which would result in sacks of bread and other chametz food to be brought into the home of every Jew in the town during the days of preparing for Passover. The threat worked. The Baal Shem Tov sent back a message inviting the general to his home, and my father went there right away, bringing with him one of his subordinates. Upon entering the front room, they quickly saw through the open doorway of the second room that the Baal Shem Tov was sitting there looking down, totally absorbed in a book, which my father subsequently found out was called Zohar. However, before he could enter the room or even knock on the door, my father's attention was caught by a large mirror on the wall in the front room where he was still standing. He went over to it, having decided to comb his hair before going to meet the Rebbe. He glanced at the mirror, and to his astonishment, instead of himself, he saw in it scenery that resembled the outskirts of his hometown. Upon closer examination, he saw the road that went into the town to a spot where he could see his own house. Totally startled, he shouted to his staff officer to come and see. The two of them stared. Suddenly they could see inside the house, where the general's wife was sitting at a table, composing a letter to her husband. They were even able to see the letter clearly enough to read it. She was apologizing for the long break in communication and explained that it was due to an earlier than expected and difficult delivery of a baby boy. Both mother and son were doing well. My father was barely able to control the powerful emotions that were generated due to the vision in the mirror. He thanked the Baal Shem Tov profusely. Several weeks later, he received a letter in the mail from his wife, and it was identical to what he had seen written in the mirror. At that point, my father wrote down in great detail the whole episode in his personal diary. "I," concluded the commanding officer, said to Rabbi Shneur-Zalman, "and the son who was mentioned in that letter as being born. Also the journey which my father wrote down the whole story is in my possession. If you will stay a bit longer, I will show it to you." And he did.